Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Cafe podcast. I'm really excited today to have Ariella Shoham with us. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of C8 Health. They are a best practices platform for clinical teams and hospitals, and she has really amazing background in many regulated industries, but healthcare in specific, around introducing new platforms and integrating AI and really ensuring that the organizations are prepared, have considered all of the parameters. And we're excited to dive in today. We're going to talk about the topic of ethics in healthcare and some of the things that we're all facing as marketers and how we might navigate that with more truth and honesty and careful consideration to the ethics of them. So we're very excited to have you here. Ariella is a marketing strategist. She's an ROI evangelist. We love that. Tech storyteller, an awareness generation mogul, and an avid runner and an aspiring core Pilates and yoga practitioner, which I love both of those. So I would come to your class in a moment. Ariella, welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Sally, for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, and she has the lovely accent too, which I could listen to all day long.
Definitely. I'd have to say it's Australian, otherwise no one will know what they're listening to. Yes, it's my Australian accent.
I love it. I love it. And I'm a country music fan, so one of my longtime loves have been Keith Urban. I love his Australian accent as well. So
good love.
Yes. So, Ariella, let's start with our mugs. We're in the cafe. What kind of thing do you love in your cup? And tell us about your mug. It's cute.
So the first company really that brought me here is a company called ADOC. So this is
okay.
And we aid doctors with AI. That's why it's called ADOC.
Oh, okay. It's not AI doc,
which is really important. So wait, I'll just tell you about the mug and then I'll tell you about ADOC. They actually created a little cartoon for each employee and we had it on our wall. And then they also created your own little mug so that you could drink your coffee. And I drink my coffee. It's actually instant coffee and I just drink it black. Spirited instant coffee, black, no sugar. That's all.
Instant coffee. God bless you.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I know. I'm not fussy about it. And it's actually hot. It's not cold. So
nice.
My coffee story.
Nice. I love that. Awesome. So tell us about ADOC.
So ADOC is a company that created an AI algorithm, which today is, I don't know if it's a bit of an apprehensive term, but at the time in 2016, it's an AI that can detect abnormalities in CT scans.
Oh, interesting.
And when I joined, they were just about to receive their first FDA clearance. You need an FDA clearance. It's a 510K, so it's a diagnostic aid clearance.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a dedicated clearance for every abnormality that you can find. And so yes, it's really challenging. And the first abnormality that we went to market with was brain bleeds, was intracranial hemorrhages. Mm-hmm. And we had the ability to detect this abnormality and prioritize it for the radiologists. And the audience for this solution was radiologists themselves. Right. And I'll just say that what was challenging, and this goes to what you said about AI doc, is when I joined, I don't know if you remember this, when women, I still to this day, when I go to get my mammography, the clinic says we have mammo with CAD. I don't know if you experienced this. So CAD is computer-aided diagnostics. And I would say 30 years ago, this was the first AI that knew to detect abnormalities in imaging. And it actually was really inferior to what we have today, and it wasn't user-friendly. But the pull came from the market. So women had heard that there's this ability to augment a physician with a diagnostic aid. And they would go to clinics and say, do you have mammo with CAD? And so this actually forced action on radiologists 30 years ago to adopt a technology that was not necessarily good, was hard for them to use, but this was pulled from the market. So I just think that's an insane story from a marketing perspective. This was not the case with us. We were not going to approach end users. We were going to approach radiologists, but I had to overcome this sort of aversion from technology that they had in the history and explain that we're not here to replace you, we're here to augment you.
Right. I think that's an important message for any application of AI. There's no higher reasoning, there's no gut, there's no heart or conscience, or to the topic we want to get into, ethics in AI. It is trained on language, and it's basically a giant librarian that has read every book in the library and can spit out the information quickly, but it doesn't have that human higher functioning, which is never going to be replaceable completely. If your job is only to read books and highlight the highlight reel, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe your job's in trouble.
Agreed.
But for my and large in healthcare particularly, I think people can breathe easy knowing humans are still required.
And I think that for radiology, because it's not actually a patient-facing function, right? So there was this concern that now that AI is there and AI that uses computer vision to actually look at an image, this will replace the radiologist. And the more I spoke to radiologists about this when I was trying to explain why this is an augmentation tool, I said, look, this isn't a competition between a radiologist and the AI. This is a pseudo competition between a radiologist using AI and a radiologist not, right?
Yes.
And the ability of these two forces together, the radiologist with everything you just said, right? The intuition, so many years of study, plus a machine that just can look, methodically at, a CT scan has 600 images in it, or sometimes even more, right? So the ability to really go through every single image, again, is a challenge. So this combined force is actually where the future is going to go to. And I think it was well received because I think they did see the utility in using this and enjoyed using it as well.
Sure. That's amazing. Well, we definitely want to know a little about C8 Health and kind of what types of work you're doing there as well.
So I just joined C8 Health recently, it's already been a bit more than a year ago. And I joined because they were basically at the same stage that I joined ADOC. They were a startup. They had their initial go-to-market. This was a different AI solution. It wasn't regulated or did not require any regulation. It actually aggregates best practices that already exist within a hospital and make them accessible to the practicing team of clinicians.
Oh, interesting.
Predominantly in the operating room. And so one of the founders is an anesthesiologist, and he was in the operating theatre, and he saw that people in that room, they could have been residents, they could have been anyone on the operating team, was checking things on ChatGPT. And he said to himself, this isn't the right way to do it. There are best practices of how to do things. Of course, maybe you don't remember how to do them here. This is a different side, or you haven't done this for a while. And of course there are, right? Every hospital writes their own protocols.
Right.
And so what he decided to do was create an AI-based engine that knows to aggregate all of this knowledge, whatever format it's in, and make it accessible through voice or text or however you want to ask.
Oh, interesting. So how, we know that ChatGPT can hallucinate and make things up. And if you're ever feeling bad about yourself, just put something into ChatGPT and it will make you feel like you're the smartest human on the planet.
Correct.
So how does your solution account for that? Is it bailing out the accuracy?
So what it's actually doing, because it's using existing data from within the facility itself.
Oh, okay, great.
It's not inventing anything. This is the pure example that you gave of the librarian, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, how do I install a Belmont infuser? Belmont infuser is something that is used to transfuse blood in a OB situation. And it will just show you the source. It'll say, okay, here is the video that the head of the department created. And if it's giving you context in terms of writing something down, it'll also show you, right, this is what Dr. So-and-so has written in this folder. So it's not actually coming up with new concepts at all. It's just making them accessible to you when you need them.
Just aggregating that internal source.
And making it accessible, because we know this as marketers as well, right? I have Google Docs, I have PDFs, I have Dropboxes, everything is saved everywhere. So just by saying, look, where do I find this, or how do, even simple things like who's on the rotation with me tomorrow, who's in the operating room, what's my schedule, when are my vacations, like even things that are not just specific to how the operating room works, they're all saved in a million different places. And so that's where the hallucinations don't happen, because they're all being pulled from a very specific pool of data.
Sure. That's great. Well, so there, rest easy, listener. They aren't in the surgery suite asking how to do the surgery.
Exactly.
They're filling the details. So your work has covered brand new seed to growth to maturity stage businesses with a lot of success, and some in really regulated environments, like we said, the FDA, healthcare, AI, cyber, whatever. When we landed on the idea of talking about kind of ethics in healthcare for this episode, which sounds really broad, how do you start to narrow that down? Is there like specific things that you've seen or decisions that you've had to walk organizations through that fall under that idea, to just take it from this broad idea to finding a path?
And I think this came up when you and I had discussed ethics in marketing of solutions to the healthcare world, regardless of AI or not. And I'd given you a couple of examples. I said that during COVID, there was this campaign that AstraZeneca, which was one of the 3 vaccines that was being administered at the time in Europe, has a high correlation with pulmonary embolisms. And this actually stopped the administration of this AstraZeneca vaccine and put a delay on, I would say, quite a few countries in Europe until this sort of died down, meaning pulmonary embolism is something that is correlated exactly the same with the other vaccines. Pulmonary embolisms are correlated with birth control. There are many correlations with smoking, with many other actions that are not related necessarily to the AstraZeneca vaccine. And my thought at the time was, this is really dangerous marketing. Like, someone had come out with this claim that was not really backed by any real research and had created such a scare with an audience and impacted people's lives in a negative way. And it got me to thinking that there must be some sort of guardrail for marketing in healthcare, because it's when people's lives are at stake, I think there has to be a bit more control on how things are marketed. And so that's sort of how we started that discussion. I have a few other examples as well, but that was my initial sort of realization that something here's amiss, you know?
Yeah. And have you found in the pursuit of that thought, is there guardrails? I went to a mental health marketing conference several years back, and one of the presenters created a code of ethics for marketers.
Oh.
She created it herself, and it's how she operates her agency. And we know that physicians have their vows and their commitments to patients to do no harm. And honestly, I think patients need to take that vow too, to do no harm in
physician. Absolutely.
How do we start that conversation? Maybe you and I need to craft a code of ethics for healthcare marketers.
We totally do. Another example that I think I gave you was at ADOC. We were sort of venturing out of radiology and launching a solution that was specific for neurology and the neuroscience sphere. And again, around brain bleeds and the early detection. And there were a few other players in the market. There was a very traditional player that had been in the market for 20 years. And there was another new incumbent. And they actually went out with, we're better than the other. If you're using the other, you should stop, sort of thing. And I remember calling the marketing leader of this other company. I wasn't going to call the one that had done the bad behavior. And I said to her, what are we going to do with that? Like, how can we get this other company to stop saying these things? Because if the companies that use you are going to stop, then patients' lives are really going to be at stake, because this is a solution that's helping save people's lives on a daily basis. And actually what happened in the end, which is bizarre, is that our CEO had to reach out to the CEO of the competing company and say, listen, let's stop this behavior, sort of thing. And then he was like, I know, yeah, you're right, sort of thing. Let's stop it. So a bit like kindergarten, right? Like, there has to be a responsible adult telling people how to behave. So I think you're right. I think there has to be some form of, I don't know, ethical manifest that says, look, there are places where you can stretch the truth, but there are places where you can't when patients' lives are at stake.
Yeah. And honestly, as a long-time old marketer, I would be so bold to say you shouldn't stretch the truth. And when we give ourselves permission that in some cases you can be a little bit dishonest and others not, I think that opens a slippery slope. And the ethical things that I've seen where we work with individuals in recovery or individuals who have a physical disability, it's like it has to go beyond the people first language, which is kind of as deep as I feel like the ethical boundaries go of making them human first. But even the way that we use images or storytelling can be very manipulative. And I think that that needs to be packed into our marketer's code of conduct for healthcare.
I totally agree. And I agree with you 100% on the truth stretching. And I guess the way to make it happen is to create that code of conduct and have marketers be brave and sign it and sort of say, this is what we're going to run with.
Right.
And as a marketer, you're committed to it, right? Like there has to be because there's not going to be a way to really enforce it, right? It's just about agreeing that this is a place where things have to be done differently. And actually that creates another layer of creativity, like a lot of marketers who are used to stretching the truth and, I don't know, thinking of campaigns or approaches that are really sort of iffy. It means now you have to take that extra step and be a lot more creative in how you approach the market.
Right. And for me, I feel like if I had $1 for every time people said, oh, you're in marketing, you must be a good liar. So offensive to me because as a human, I resist that kind of behavior. It's not who I am. It's not the ethos of who I am. We have 3 core values at my agency. One of them is that honesty is non-negotiable. Period. Full stop. We won't blow smoke. And we won't sell something you don't need. We won't make up a story. And that's where I have certainly had bosses who have asked me to be dishonest outright, and I have refused. In one case, the pressure persisted and I resigned. That's how strongly I felt about it.
That's a very brave move. That's brave.
But I feel like at some point there has to be a personal responsibility to operate as the adult in the rift.
Agreed.
And you have to have a boundary. And if it's just squishy to whatever the quarterly earnings want to see, then that is also a culture issue with leadership.
I agree. And I think there's this way of trying to overcome this. So I want to believe that people are not inherently trying to do harm. Like I want to believe that. I believe people are good, and I believe that they're put in positions, like you said, right? Sometimes they're misled and sometimes they're just not knowledgeable or not brave. But I want to believe they're all inherently good. And so I think that there is this attempt to, I've worked for companies like this where there's a double narrative. There's the narrative to the board.
Yes.
And then there's the narrative that goes out, right? And it is a more cautious narrative, the one that goes out to the customers.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other story of when I've worked only for technology companies and they've predominantly been to B2B, it takes time to develop a product, but you have the idea. So you actually marketing is about 6 months ahead of when the product is ready to be delivered.
Right.
So that also requires some, how would I say, it's sort of an intricate game because you're saying, okay, product people, tell me what it is you're going to be making, right?
Right.
Okay, let me now prepare the market for something that's going to be ready with various claims. And again, when it's a regulated market, there's no claims that you can make. You can't invent anything. You can't share research that hasn't been done. So it's always under sort of various caveats.
Right.
But let me create this world where a product that does ABC exists. And then what we've found sometimes is that it doesn't end up actually doing a lot of what you said, which puts you in a very awkward position, or it's delayed even further because so that's also a bit of a tricky thing to sort of manage. But I think it comes from not necessarily wanting to do harm. It more comes from trying to align on this sort of time it takes for a product to get to market, and then the need to educate a market on something that isn't even ready then. Yeah. So I think that's where I find that's sort of a bit challenging.
Sure. And I've worked for biotech startups, and it was never malevolent, to your point.
Correct.
But the initial science that had all these claims to it is what the marketing was built on, and then they couldn't repeat it. So that's a problem.
Exactly.
So I'm reminded of a quote by Maya Angelou, who said, "Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better." And I feel like as a marketer, it's typically not a malevolent thing. I too try to believe the highest belief about everyone until they prove otherwise. But I have been in a position where I went from nonprofit work and startup work into a publicly traded company. And each one of those kinds of entities has an entire different way of looking at things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the pressure. Sometimes you get asked to do things that aren't right, and that's not okay. You have to know how to handle that. And at the end of the day, there's no simple answer to that. But I have put myself in positions where I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm the only one who died.
That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that the pressure is so high, and you actually brought up a very good point. The companies are at different stages, and the stakes are always high. And you can see now, if we look at the startup world, investors are pushing companies to accelerate at speeds that 3 years ago were like half, right? So if you came out, I see companies coming out of stealth with paying customers. Like, what is that world? And then what will happen from A to B, and what will happen from B to C? And so one is that immense pressure. And you were talking about like PE-backed companies and companies that are acquired. And it's clear that a PE company is acquiring a company to flip it in 3 years. And so it's expecting it to do crazy things.
Yeah.
And you're right. And then some people will say, I'm not dying on this hill, I'm leaving, but they'll bring in someone else who will. And that's sort of the vicious cycle, isn't it? There is this insane demand to do insane things, like grow at a speed that doesn't really make sense, or, I don't know, look really pretty for the next company that will buy you.
Right.
I guess that game should be a lot more cautious in healthcare. That's sort of where I would put that.
Yeah, I agree. We talk a lot in our agency about the patient experience and the customer experience. And in fact, this morning I listened to a podcast from the CEO of PacSun, which is a youth clothing thing.
My son wears PacSun. He loves them.
And she has, in the last 3 years since she's been CEO, she's worked with them 18 years. She has completely flipped the way they do things. And she has brought in the customer and had them co-design a way of being as an organization that's relevant to them. And that's really gutsy. And that's the thing that a lot of these fast-paced grow don't have time for or don't want time for.
Correct.
And honestly, in a lot of that race to the Mars, we're kind of on a make-believe journey that's actually happening to a hope-so ending. And so I can understand the press for that. But when it comes to patient-focused results, I think it's really important that the patients are brought in and that there's consideration to what they need. Sometimes you'll take a walk and not be solving a problem they even had.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say, I was sort of thinking about the guardrails that we talked about before. I think that there's a whole discussion about the role of FDA in general. That's changed as well.
Yeah.
When I started, and this was 2018, this was pre-COVID, right? So the FDA, at least in my neck of the woods, was used to giving clearances to machines or drugs, and I'm putting that aside, but like in my neck of the woods in radiology. And machine clearances took time, right? And there was a whole set of criteria that you would judge these machines. And then software suddenly came in, and it was like, you can't spend 5 years clearing software. I mean, 5 years is just... So we have to find a new way. And I think that puts a big challenge on the regulator. Like, I do think it is the regulator's job to protect the customer. There has to be, I mean, that's the sort of official guardrail. But I also think that the guardrail can't be too stringent, because you're never going to get good solutions to market. And I think the opposite was obviously the whole vaccine thing, where vaccines met people a year after, which is just crazy in its own realm. But whatever, the decision was made to do it. But I do think that there is a regulator in place, and I do hope that the regulator will have the patient's well-being in mind and know how to intelligently create these guardrails that are not preventing technology from meeting the market, but also sort of creating a framework that will enable patients to stay safe.
Yeah, that's good. So our audience is marketers primarily. What are some things that you've seen or things that you think they could do to start just asking the hard questions when they're preparing a campaign? Or a lot of them are in rural hospitals or small areas. What are some of the things that they need to, maybe just off the top of your mind, and I'm putting you in the hot seat here, to what things should they be considering when they're marketing a new care line or a new robot surgery or a new physician, or maybe trying to grow a service that a competitor in a suburban area has? Or what kinds of things should we encourage them to do?
So I have a story on that. My husband had to get his knee replaced, and we procrastinated because it's a scary procedure.
Yes.
And then he did a lot of research, and then he said, I want to find somewhere that uses a robot to do the surgery.
Okay.
And it ended up that was the case, right? We went to a physician, and the physician was using a robot, and the surgery went well, and my husband is great now. We joke he has a bionic knee. But the reason I'm saying this is that I drive on the highway and I see billboards saying, we have, in this case, the Da Vinci robot, come and get your procedure done with us. And I actually think that's not bad. Like, I think that it's a fact that they have it, and it's actually bringing to people's attention that they have a choice of where they get care. Mm-hmm. And I think this sort of brings me way back to the beginning of my story, right? Where I think patients should have a choice to say, I want to choose a facility that has the best technology, whatever augments or not, whatever. But in a way, it feels that, again, a man or a woman and a machine are going to be better than just each on their own. And then I have the right to choose. And I think also sort of rural areas, I'm hoping, will get that type of tension in terms of the funding that is required to bring in these sort of expensive devices. Because when it's elective, at least you do have the ability to choose, right? You're sort of, I know I can choose anywhere to get my care done, similar to what I could get my mammo anywhere, and I could get my procedure done anywhere. I want to have the choice to go to somewhere that I feel is going to give me the best care because it's maybe using technology, and that's sort of a way of advertising it.
Sure. So on your husband's search, I'm going to dig on that a little. How easy was it for him to find providers in the area with robotic-assisted surgery?
It wasn't that easy, actually. We interviewed quite a few surgeons, and the first question was, do you use a robot? And and some said no, and some said yes. And so it wasn't actually that easy. Some of them actually have a list of they use a robot, but it's not as straightforward as you'd think. Like, that's not really advertised. You're right, on their personal record, I use a robot. Yeah. It should be. Maybe.
Well,
the thing worth
doing.
doing.
The marketing claims are that it's less invasive and quicker recovery, which when you're thinking about the patient need, those should be the lead. And that's something we're working with a rural system that does have a Da Vinci robot. They were the first in the whole region to have it.
Wow.
And now all their competitors have it as well.
See?
But it's one thing to say we have a robot. It's another thing to say less pain, easier recovery, shorter recovery time.
The value that you get, the value that you as a patient will get from the robot.
Right.
And my husband had researched that. So he already came in knowing that that's why he wants to do it. But you're right, like just saying we have a robot won't help. I think it's translating that into the value that the patient gets is obviously what makes people want it.
Right. And I feel like there's something there. We talk about neuroscience and how a brain, oh, wow, I'm going to pay attention to that. But I feel like to stand out and maybe even to toe away from the story you told of we're better than all the rest, ethical lines, if we came in as marketers with here's what you need and here's what we can deliver, it removes that.
Correct.
It removes that from the conversation.
Correct.
I remember working with folks who literally they would name their competitors in their ads. And I'm like, why are you using your paid time to elevate somebody else's brand? Whether you know it or not, that's repetition. Don't talk about them.
Yeah. Talk about you and your value and your strength.
Exactly. And so I feel like maybe part of our solution is let's come with value. And honestly, that's what our brain is looking for. Is this relevant to me? And it's basing that quick sorting, the algorithm in our head, if you will, on what's important to you, decisions you've made in the past and how those worked out, and the risk level. If you feel too risky, the brain's going to go, okay, you have 11 million bits of information coming at me in this second. This one I'm not going to pay attention to.
I think this goes back to the AstraZeneca example, where I think that the reason that it succeeded, this sort of, I would say, negative marketing, was because people were very stressed in general, right? This is a pandemic. No one ever experienced it. There were these vaccines that were forced on people. Like it wasn't something that gave people the peace of mind where they can make a decision in a calm environment. It was whatever shiny bit of information that came out. It was a lot of this FUD, right? The fear, uncertainty, and doubt thrown around that I think helped that detrimental sort of impact of saying, hey, that shouldn't do. And that goes back to, again, the person behind that campaign must have had some sort of, I don't know what, but not thinking of the consequences, just thinking I want them to use my vaccine versus a different vaccine versus people just need to get vaccinated and wait with that for later.
One of our previous guests is an infodemiologist. So she studies the impact of how information trickles. And she wrote a book called Witch Hunts, Conspiracy Theories, and Fake News. And so she defines in this book how misinformation happens and the difference between that and disinformation, where one is really intentional and other is, Ariella told me, so I'm going to share it. That's a misinformation that now I have helped spread. And I think you're right. In the COVID environment, people were suspect about how quickly they got approved, which was unheard of if you've ever worked within the FDA. For example, 10 or 15 years is a pretty quick timeline. But so they were, in a sense, preying on the fear that already existed. And
that impacts our judgment, right, as people, because like you were saying, it's our job as marketers to say this is good for you as a patient, but equally as impactful as telling you this is bad for you, right? Like that's the other side of the coin. And if it is misinformation that I'm giving you, then...
And that's where we need to have a responsibility to check it out. What's the source of this? And that's what this infodemiologist said. What's the source of this? What is the interest? Who benefits from this? And that will help you get to the bottom of a lot of things. And frankly, in our world right now, there isn't a day that goes by where I'm like, I don't even know what I can believe anymore.
100%.
I mean, we need to research a little too.
I agree. That's why I think also the responsibility is on the marketer to behave, right? But I think we do have to hope that the consumer will raise a flag and ask the right questions.
Right.
And you're right, like the generations now that are just fed information and believe so many things to be true just because it's on their phone and they see it and it must be true. It's a new type of world where really, and it actually doesn't, it's actually not that hard to check it and verify. But you're just so used to receiving this information, believing that it's all true, that you're like, well, why should I bother? And it's probably true. And I think that's a change that has to happen as well.
Do you think, and this is totally opinion, so you don't have to answer if you don't want, in my unscientific, and hopefully Zuck doesn't come after me, Facebook is one of the worst platforms where I see just blatantly false information. And it gets shared and shared and reshared and reshared, and you're like, I think I saw this story 3 months ago, and now it's circulating again. My husband's mother believes everything she reads on Facebook. And that's not a good way to live if anybody's listening. Don't just believe everything you see. Like I think of the AstraZeneca example, and I think of the pharmaceutical ads on TV. And then at the very end, it's all really fast and they're blah, 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 all the risks because they have to. That's all kind of a marketing thing where they're like, yeah, some people have had the bleed or the pneumothorax or whatever.
Yes.
I feel like it's a little bit more prevalent in the pharmaceutical world.
It is prevalent. It is. And I'll just say on the Facebook, and I would just say like Facebook and Instagram, and I think the platforms that are exposing people to content, right? There's a whole other discussion about how it's being, moderated, and there should be stopgaps, whatever. But I don't know if you know this, there was a lawsuit. Do you know this? So someone on the West Coast actually sued Facebook for addiction. And Facebook has already admitted that there is an addictive element to their content. And this girl had been addicted to Facebook and YouTube and whatever, Instagram since she was 9. Let's just put that aside, how that happened. And she actually won. She won the lawsuit. It's something like $6 million. And it was about that addictive do harm. Like you knew it was addictive. Yes. You continued to do it because you wanted to get more people on the platforms. And now this is insane. And wait, this goes back to what you just said. With no cautionary, tiny 1.000 fund. Like that's really all they needed to say was where some content could be addictive, don't use it. But there was no guardrails there. And so just sort of to end your thoughts on Facebook, well, I don't think they're going to change, but they are going to add a tiny little warning, and someone's going to speak really, really quickly and you're not going to hear anything there.
Well, it's like now we're complying. We have this little window that pops up and says, agree to the terms and conditions. How many of us ever read the terms and conditions? Now we've done a check that we've been responsible, but in contrast, I've seen companies that will do a pop-up and say, we have to put this legal stuff in here. This is the bottom line. We are going to use your information this way and not this way. Here's the full terms and conditions. And I appreciate when
I do too.
They're just straightforward. I know I'm not going to get around the terms and conditions if I want to buy something off the site or whatever. But I appreciate the organizations that are a little bit playful with it and just honest, not trying to.
And that goes to the whole, the other discussion of honesty in marketing, right? Like you can be honest, you can, and you can still succeed. Like there are lots of brands that are honest brands and that create that sense of, I guess, belief, right? Because you really come out honest and genuine. I have a feeling that that's going to become more and more sought after, right? Genuine marketing and honest marketing, just because I think there's so much of that fun around that people are just tired of it.
Well, and trust is at an all-time low. So the only way to trust is through with honesty, with authenticity, with bringing value for what we have for the customer and not this fancy tap dancing that's required to pretend. It's not worth it anymore, particularly in healthcare that's so personal.
Agreed.
Well, I love this conversation. So, what do we think for our listeners? What's one thing that we can check on ourselves? Let's start our code of ethics right now. What's one thing we should check in our work this week?
It should be, the Hippocratic oath, do no harm, isn't it? Isn't that the oath in marketing? Just do no harm. Be creative. Don't fall into a cliche. Don't be a cliche and just choose the easy way out. It's not easy to market. Really, it's not. And that it's not easy to convince people to do things they don't want to do because A, they don't know what it is that you're trying to give them and it's new. So be creative about how you introduce them to something new. Don't use the easy way out and just use a shortcut that's not fair.
That's good. That's so good. I tell people all the time, the hardest thing in marketing is to be simple.
Exactly.
Get to the point with truth and simply relay the story. And that's some of the hardest work we do. It's easier to just parrot the blah, blah, blah that we get from the science officer, the whoever.
Exactly.
The data.
It's the hardest thing to be simple. That's so true.
But we can be simply honest. Let's start with that.
That's a great one.
If you wanted to help us write a code of ethics for healthcare marketers, let us know. We're going to do this. I think we should.
I think we should too.
Yeah. Ariella, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. And if you want to know more about Ariella or connect with her, where should people look?
I shared my LinkedIn. It's my name and surname, Ariella Shoham, in one word, and I'd be happy to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Sally. I love this conversation, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, we'll link her LinkedIn in the show notes, and if you like this conversation or want to be part of helping us create a code of ethics for healthcare marketers, come on, bring it. Thank you very much, listener. Please share or like this episode if you like it and tell others about it. It's the easiest way to share the news and help us know that the topics we're talking about are relevant. Until next time, be well, and we will see you soon.